I'm thanking you, and I'll hand over to the Executive Vice President of ISPI, Paolo Magri. Thank you.
No, don't go. Don't go. Because you have been very good, great, but nasty with me, because you have stolen my entry quote, because by now, everyone know what I would have said today, now would be the time for coffee break, but there is no coffee, no break, no time, and no break. So I was ready to enter and say, okay, I'm excited because I'm your generation, I'm 20 years old, and you said that at the beginning. So now what can I say? The only thing I can do and tell you that the only people who can stretch now are our future leaders that are invited to go. Let's give them a big round of applause. And you as well, thank you.
Thank you.
And good afternoon. We immediately move into our next Get Inspired. We have been talking a lot about war and conflict. We have been also talking quite a lot about the consequences of war and conflict, meaning famine, spread disease, and trouble in society. Just today, 2 hours ago on BBC, Secretary of State Blinken said that the entire population of Gaza is at risk of famine. It's the first time that the entire population of a country is at risk of famine. And so it's so important to hear people who deal with this problem. We had Filippo Grandi, we had Cindy McCain, and now we have a new guest, which I invite on floor, Anna Praus. Anna has spent most of her life in war zone, documenting what happens and coordinating life-saving humanitarian aid. She survived 3 assassination attempts, and you are the right person to talk to us on these issues.
Hello, everyone. I need a clicker. I'm sorry.
Stolen my quote, but not stolen my...
So I spent 8 years in Iraq. I went there on June 8th. I remember it as it was my birthday, when I got a call from the Red Cross to set up a field hospital, and it was right after the invasion. And I left on the 30th of June of 2011, 8 years and 22 days later. And the Red Cross wanted me out there to set up a field hospital. I had been a journalist for a long time for a major newspaper, and I had been in the Middle East and North Africa a lot, but I had no experiences in a war zone. After a few months with the Red Cross, once the field hospital was set up, I got a call from the CPA, Ambassador Bremer, who was in charge of the Coalition Provisional Authority, which was the interim government of Iraq immediately after the invasion. So I was asked to join the team of the senior advisor working from what used to be Saddam's palace to rebuild a health system. And that was the first time I met with the military. I'm an Italian, I'm civilian. The military is quite a foreign notion for us. I still remember when the senior advisor had set up a desk in his office with the civilians. And I said, no, I want a desk in the big room with the military, because I need to get them to know. I need to figure out how they work, and I need them to figure out how I work. After a few years in Baghdad, I was called to implement General Petraeus' surge, and I was sent to lead a provincial reconstruction team in Nasiriyah. Provincial reconstruction teams are a mix of military and civilians. And the surge meant a surge of military forces, but also a surge of creative ideas. And by 2007, there was a full-fledged civil war in Iraq. So there needed to be some creative ideas. And here in this picture that I'm showing here, it's the Baghdad Philharmonic. I managed to convince them to come down to Nasiriyah, where there's the Ziggurat of War, which is a very famous archaeological site. And the Ziggurat of War was off limits to Iraqis. So already allowing them to see something and see their Philharmonic in Nasiriyah was a huge event. At the PRT, I had to lead a team of military and civilians. And thanks to my times in Baghdad, I had always been kind of shocked how we civilians the military were kind of expendable. They would go out every day, they could get killed, it wasn't a big deal. Whereas we civilians would cocoon up in on military bases or in the famous green zone, and we were absolutely not allowed to get hurt. But how do you build a relationship, both with the military and with the Iraqi civilians, when you're cocooned on a military base? So my first attempt was, let's sit together with my counterparts and let's work together. Instead of blaming each other for our differences, because there are differences, let's capitalize on our strengths. And that's what I did. And that's where I also realized how, when putting the different mindsets together, the most brilliant ideas come out. And I gained the respect from the military because I had a boots on the ground approach. I was not in Iraq to stay on a military base. I was not in Iraq to stay in a green zone. I was in Iraq to make a difference. And the only difference I could make was by, first of all, gaining the respect of the military, putting my life at risk, and then gaining the respect of the Iraqis. General Petraeus' idea of the surge was to send us civilians in the middle of nowhere and start interacting with tribal leaders, with the government officials on a daily basis. It was kind of preposterous to ask the military to do that instead of us. It's as if I would be requested to knock down doors in Fallujah to hunt down terrorists. That's not my job. So I do not know where to start. I bow in front of those who do, but that's not my job. And that was not the job of the military, to gain the hearts and minds, because gaining the hearts and minds, that's a way to fight terrorism. That's a way how to show the friendly face of the Western world. That's a way how to also counter the message of hatred that comes from the terrorists. But if you don't show your face, if they only hear what the Muqtada al-Sadrs say about you, then it's very hard for the people to change their mind. I stepped it up a notch because I soon noticed that, yes, it was important to gain the respect of the leaders, but I needed to get the respect of the common people, of the population in Nasiriyah and in the whole province. And that's where the first thing to start showing your face, you need to also build capacity in a country. I remember the governor of Nasiriyah blew me up as soon as I arrived there. I still can't hear from an ear from that, but I'm alive. We were going to build him a hospital. When I arrived, I canceled the hospital building. There was no doctors, no nurses. You need to build capacity. Now, it's a buzzword. Capacity building is a buzzword that everyone likes. It's easier said than done. In a war zone, to bring in doctors, nurses, experts in agriculture, experts in the rule of law, it's very complicated. Also because the Iraqis don't really want to go, masses of Iraqis will never be allowed to go on a military base. So together with the military, we came up with, frankly, a brilliant idea. Build a center, a training center in Nasiriyah. Because if you send people abroad, you train 10 or 20, 30, 50, not more. But if you bring Italians over, Americans over, then you can train thousands. And we set up this training center, which was very interesting because we had, of course, T-walls. It had to be on Iraqi ground, so I had to discuss with the Iraqis to get the piece of ground. It had to be safe so that the NGOs who came over would not have to travel forever and potentially get blown up. It had American T-walls because we needed to be protected. I had Gurkhas, Nepalese Gurkhas, who look tremendously unintimidating. They look extremely happy, and that's what I wanted, to greet, the Iraqis who came in. And that was the success. I mean, showing the friendly face. I had NGOs come over like Smile Train, and it was just not only about saving the people, teaching the doctors how to perform surgeries, but it was also how to show empathy, which is something that is really hard to find in war zones. Showing the friendly face also means that you need to go out and mingle with the population. And that's what I did. Now, all of this, I need to say it in a few minutes, but it took years. And I went to amusement parks to mingle with the people. I went to funerals to show my respect. I went to weddings to show how, to share the happiness. I even had access to the Nasiriyah prison, where I did some programs for prisoners to prepare them when they would leave the prison. And, the prison was full of Muqtada al-Sadr followers, and they started seeing, them too, that maybe all that they had heard about us foreigners, maybe that wasn't all that true. At the end of the day, those ultra-religious people I started aggravating the ultra-religious people. And I started aggravating Muqtada al-Sadr. He was in Iran, I was in the streets. So the people started saying, here's someone who actually cares for us, whereas our leader is in Iran. So what Muqtada al-Sadr did was extremely ingenious. He could not kill me anymore, because it would have been counterproductive with the people of Nasiriyah to blow me up in the traditional way. So what he decided to do was to launch a fatwa against me. Now, a fatwa, as probably all of you know, is a death sentence. And I knew about it a few days before he was going to unleash it at the Friday prayer in Qom, in Iran. And who told me were the Iraqis? The Iraqi secret services knew about it. And I had seen death before in my life. I had been blown up, my room had been blown up, the governor had tried to kill me. But that was something to live in hiding for the rest of my life, because someone had unleashed God against me. That was something that I had never thought about. And I had also never thought about, how do I get out of this? I knew that if I involved my government, the Italian government, or if I had involved the US government, there would have been an escalation in rhetoric. And that's exactly what Muqtada al-Sadr would have wanted. So I thought, you know what, I've dedicated, at that point it was 7 years of my life to Iraq. Let's see what they are ready to do for me. And the chief of police, who you see here in the picture, General Sabah al-Fatlawi, went to Iran and met with the most powerful man in the Middle East, General Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Quds forces. And he was the only man who could actually tell Muqtada al-Sadr what to do. And eventually, my fatwa was never proclaimed. So when people ask me, do you think you had success in Iraq? Of course, it's very complicated. There's never a success, a huge success. But for me, just knowing that the Iraqis had stepped out for my life to save my life, putting their life at risk, sorry, but that, to me, is quite a success. After my 8 years in Iraq, I went to Somalia. I brought my boots on the ground approach in other countries, Somalia, Syria, Mozambique, and all those countries, Libya, and all those countries who have been, hit by the Arab Spring. And then I brought it to Google. I was hired by Google to be in charge of the government relations with the most complicated governments in the world. And it was really interesting to see how there was one concept that nobody seemed to understand: patience. When you do boots on the ground, it's not like you get there and you say, here I am, you need to trust me, let's move on. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of patience. And of course, there's two worlds. There's Silicon Valley, and then there's the rest of the world. And the rest of the world where I was going was especially on the African continent. I had a friend, a colleague of mine, a Kenyan colleague, who used and abused the word easy. Everything was easy. So when I got him on calls with my Silicon Valley colleagues and the CEO, it was like, oh yeah, I can do this, easy, everything's easy. And then I would say, but Anna, Philip just said it's easy. And I was like, easy for you in Silicon Valley means that it's done by close of business. Easy on the African continent means that you do not need to believe in reincarnation. So here are, again, what I found in the world is just a lot of mentality clashes. And that's what I did with my boots on the ground, was also understand what's in there behind the scenes, what's behind the people. If you want to fight terrorism, you need to understand the mindset. I still remember it was the civil aviation, director of civil aviation in Kenya, who told me when I was trying to pressure him, could you please sign this, non-binding agreement? And he was like, could you be a little more patient? Sister Anna, you might have the watch, but we have the time. And that is true. And we Westerners often forget that. Thank you.
You mentioned the watch and the time, and I was watching the time, which was going fast, but please stay 1 more minute, because I would like you to comment on this survey. We ask our young audience to answer this question: is state violence ever justifiable? And the answer, we had 3 answers: yes, but only if a country needs to defend itself from a military aggression, 60% of respondents; no, violence is never justifiable, 36%; yes, if it can help achieve significant economic or geopolitical gains. Are you surprised? How would you comment?
No, I'm not surprised. That being said, I encountered violence a lot in my life. It gets in your bones. And you got to understand it. And there's something that torture is an utter act of violence, for example. And I remember having this very interesting conversation. I used to be, when I left for Iraq in my early 30s, I was the person of the white and the blacks, the good and the bad, no doubt. Well, when you live in that world, you start doubting. And I had gained the respect of the local people, and the chief of police once came to me and said, oh, Aziza, I am starting to torture less because I know that you're against torture. So I was chuckling. I was like, to torture less? I mean, what does that mean? And then we sat down. He was really upset that I did not understand why he was using torture. And here he made it very personal. He said, Aziza, if your children were kidnapped, and they have told you that they will be killed by tonight, but you know someone who knows where they are, wouldn't you torture that someone to get to save your children? I have to say that put it in a different perspective. I thought it through the eyes of a chief of police. He said, I need to, when I capture someone and I know that there is a plot to blow up the market, I need to torture that someone because it is to save thousands of people. So I'm just giving this example to show you there is really no, of course, it is bad. I mean, I don't want to take the side of, but it made me think a lot when he made it personal.
And I agree, it's consistent to the answer.
It
to
is
this question.
totally consistent.
Let's give a round of applause to Anna. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Anna. And thank you very much.